Okay, so I think we can get things going. Morning, everyone. Morning to tactical job hunting in times of crisis. I had discussions with you individually talking about this. Like I said, this is not the first time I'm running this type of panel discussion. Last time, we had, I think, 4 or 5 people they found very useful. So we just kind of carry on with that. So pretty much I'll just walk you through briefly the objective and the agenda for this session, so that we are all on the same page. Basically, we as Optima, we decided to enable this type of panel discussions because we can see there's a lot of people on the job market because of the current situation, and they're looking actively for job. And we want to share, we want to enable a place where people can share ideas and knowledge in terms of how they find and how they approach, the job hunting. How we do it pretty much through open and honest conversations. Everyone can add so that we all learn and gain. The agenda pretty much for today is what I want to do is I'm going to have everyone to introduce, now, and then you can just say, where you are, what is your situation, how you basically ended up here, what is sort of your background, maybe what is the type of positions that you're looking for. And then I'll tell you briefly in 30 seconds, just as a reminder in terms of, who we are as well. I've prepared a few slides, which I'm hoping, you may find useful. So it's just some top tips and insights from us. And then we'll move into the discussion, which is basically, I'll show you the full details when we get there. I prepared a number of questions that I think came up, so we can go through that and share, our views on that. And then we'll just close and you can give me your feedback. So we've got JV. Maybe we can just go, one by one. JV, do you want to sort of introduce briefly yourself?
You're on mute, sir.
Classic. So I repeat, I'm JV. I've been here in London since 2004. I didn't lose the accent, unfortunately. So I came from Paris, worked for Microsoft, and then, not going to run you through my CV, but until recently, I was working at Branch, mobile attribution and deep linking. And then blaming COVID-19, I was brutally laid off as 80 other people in the company, like 5% of the workforce at Branch. So that's me and why I'm here.
Thank you. Simon?
Sure. So I'm Simon Besley. I have recently also been made redundant from Episerver, who are cloud-based content management business. I've been in tech for 15, 16 years, maybe a little longer, generally in sales, predominantly account management. So essentially looking after portfolios of existing clients, increasing revenues with those clients, upselling and so on. That's me.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Michael?
Well, so I'm Michael Reha. Looking around, I'm probably the oldest one. I'm in the MarTech industries, online MarTech, since about 15 years, and spent another more than 10 years prior to that in the IT. At big companies, small companies, startups, like everything, most of the time sales roles. So my last engagement with Optima, I've been partner manager here for Europe. The company struggled a lot last year, and I took the chance to leave the Titanic before it sinks, which means I've got a good package, and which makes my situation at the moment a little bit easier. Nevertheless, I'm keen to get something new, ideally around startup or smaller companies is something what I prefer.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Michael. James?
So, yeah, I'm James, so very similar to Michael. I've mostly spent the last sort of 10, 15 years in startup, mid-enterprise type companies. Again, AdTech, MarTech, but moving more towards the sales end of the piece with solutions consulting. So very much pre-sales is where I enjoy playing, as the strategic gains in there. Unfortunately, again, made redundant from Showpad at the very first week of COVID-19, along with about 18 to 20% of the entire workforce, which is hard, I think, for them as a business, but onwards and upwards, I suspect.
Yeah, thank you. Rob?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to meet you all. So my name is Rob Murphy. I have been in tech for the last 10 years or so. I've gone on an interesting journey, starting off with like big enterprises like IBM, then doing a good stint at Salesforce, helping them to grow out their market share in the European markets. I then was a first person on the ground for Sprout Social, who are a social media management tool. I led the expansion in Europe from 1 to 50 people, and then had an exit at the end of last year when they went public. I decided to go into another startup because I'm clearly clinically insane. So I did a similar role and did a startup called Lytics, which is a customer data platform. You might have come across them before, Michael. But essentially led the EMEA expansion, built out a team from 1 to about 7. And then unfortunately, the organization was quite heavily exposed to companies that were most impacted by COVID. So had a lot of unexpected churn, which in turn shrunk the cash runway significantly. So Lytics unfortunately let go about 25% of the workforce, including the EMEA team, in order to extend that runway back out again so they could go into their Series D with a bit of momentum behind the business. But on an optimistic note, I think this happened about a month ago, and I'm really encouraged to see the opportunities that are on the market today. And good to meet you all again.
Good. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. So I think we've got, I think, interesting mix here because we've got sales, we've got account management, we've got channel, we've got UK, we've got Germany. So I'm really hopeful for the discussion. Just very briefly, because with some of you, like with Michael, we've known each other from Omnichannel times, where I kind of started my MarTech career. So I've been in the marketing technology industry for the last 15 years and basically kickstarted Optima in 2013. So we've been around to the market for 7 years. And yeah, I mean, it kind of started off prior to working, for MarTech technology companies like ExactTarget and Maximizer, which obviously were part of Salesforce and Oracle later on. So that's where I'm coming from. I think those of you who kind of worked with us maybe a bit longer, you'll know that the type of clients we work with is just a sample. We mainly concentrate on UK market, Western EU. I think Germany is actually our second biggest market where we recruit. We also touch on a little bit on the US market. The positions we concentrate on include anything from sales, marketing, client services, and all the executive positions. We don't recruit for any junior type of roles. And yeah, like I said, the main focus is really on marketing technology, SaaS-based companies, tech companies. So that's where we're coming from. I think just to kind of give a bit of foundation for the discussion, a few things which kind of we've gathered through, our research, our thinking, different discussions. I just wanted to give you a few hopefully useful bits which maybe, like I said, will get us going in terms of the discussion. So I think what we see, what is important in terms of your LinkedIn, or whether it's your CV or general your online presence, I think in terms of, like, for example, LinkedIn, the headline, which is catchy and which kind of answers the question, what pains do you solve? Kind of makes you a little bit stand out, from a lot of candidates versus, if you write, I'm just looking for a new career opportunity. I think we see that companies like to kind of see obviously they kind of make decisions, and as recruiters, when we search, you make a decision whether you're gonna spend a bit more time on a profile or not, depending actually what you see first. So have something which is kind of engaging. So if you have experience in turning around businesses through difficult economic times, put it there. So just think of the sort of the main tagline which relates to you. Then the profile's summary again is kind of in line. So what value do you add? What are you good at? If you've grown client portfolios by X amount, you've got the figures, you've got the track record, you've brought revenues or increase. As you can give some examples. I think that's what really again sort of will make your profile to stand out. I think especially if you operate in sort of revenue commercial type of roles, it's very good to have those numbers there as much as obviously you can release. Then the other thing is in terms of the online presence. I don't know whether you are familiar with. There's something called social selling dashboard. It's a LinkedIn. It's a LinkedIn tool. Let me just briefly maybe show you. This basically helps. So if you do Google and you type in social selling index, then you can get your score. And this is how LinkedIn is viewing you. And I'm talking about LinkedIn obviously a lot here, because this is, for us, it's really the main platform, for actually for hunting a job or sort of, positioning yourself, because every business will cross-check, your CV against what's on your LinkedIn. So you can kind of see how you score. You can get 100 points, and that's kind of divided into 4 different areas, depending on your activity, how you rate against the industry, how you rate against, people in your network. So obviously the higher the score, the better it is. So again, something to kind of just have a think, which we
what are the data points that's pulling from?
Well, obviously this is based on your activity on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just in terms of who you're connected with, or how many connections you might have, that sort of thing.
So so obviously the number of people and the type of people you're connected with, how you engage online. If you write articles, if you add relevant content,
Right.
things like that. So obviously LinkedIn kind of gathers all of that. And I think obviously the higher the score, the more interesting the profile is. And I think you can also will be higher optimized in terms of the recruitment searches as well, because obviously we and this is something that I'm going to talk about, I think, as a next thing. Sorry. In terms of the search optimization, so I'm kind of jumping a little bit. So obviously the better the profile is, and the more sort of keywords you have, then your profile will come up higher in, whether it's us, as recruiters looking for, the right profiles, or, the companies, using their own sources and searching for profiles, directly. So it's quite useful, to have the profile as good as it can get, using all the different relevant keywords depending on your role, and obviously what gets the social selling score higher is if you share knowledge free. I think a lot of sort of currently a lot of authentic posts which kind of really add value and start interesting conversations. I think that's drawing a lot of good attention as well. So something to really think about. We kind of call it post-corona profile, post-corona CV, and encourage people to be even more active, especially on LinkedIn. The other tip, which I keep telling candidates to concentrate on is actually, your research is very key. And I think you need to think about the businesses you would be stepping into potentially. You need to think where this business will be in 6, 12 or 18 months. Today, I think it's even more critical now to think, will they survive? Is the funding, right? Is the product right? What are the chances to succeed? Talk to your network if you're applying to a specific, company and people who either work there or they may know people who work there. Try to get as many insights as possible, because I think it may be very easy to step into the wrong thing as well. And the last thing we advise is, you need to think about the recruitment process as a sales process, which means you need to drive it. So for example, if you identified, 20, 30 positions which are interesting, or you've identified the right, companies, have a simple spreadsheet. If you applied or if you used your network, and sort of have on a regular basis, I think you need to keep reminding yourself, because what we see is actually that there is a number of businesses that are still recruiting, but they really taking the time. And I think you really need to be in front of their mind and just really keep reminding yourself, especially if they started your conversation. So it's really good to have a strategy how you're going to drive your recruitment process forward, rather than reactively waiting. They will come back to me whenever, because I think things may take a long time. So we've also, and you can agree or disagree with me, we can talk about that, but we've been doing a lot of research, and in our view, there'll be 5 overperforming sectors. So obviously, here we kind of represent the MarTech industry, but have you been thinking about maybe switching into something which has a strong future, in the years to come? So in our view, it's healthcare. I think there's going to be a demand for increasing in capacity there. Especially healthcare and technology. So that could be combined. Obviously, all types of technologies which increase productivity. That's obviously is already on the rise. Communication services, everything's going online. Obviously, we're not going to the offices, anytime soon. Utilities and consumer staples, which are obviously the essentials. So we think these are the 5 sectors which will do well, and maybe it's worth thinking about switching the industry as well. Where we also get a lot of our research and a lot of ideas, we check regularly places like Crunchbase, UK Tech News, PitchBook News, TechCrunch, Sifted.eu. They actually have a very good list of startups which are still hiring and are well backed up. And that's actually a list across not just the UK, but really across Europe. So, so there's a lot of interesting data there, trust radius. So again, I'm sure you probably have your own sources, probably some of them, but this is where we've been sort of getting a lot of our research from. Now, just as an encouragement as well, just to show you that there are still businesses which are doing well, companies which, even amongst the crisis, they've been raising funds. That there is, I've only prepared 3, but there's a way more. So on Fido, AI-based ID verification business, back in April, they raised 100 million. There's a company called Tractable. This is InsurTech, again, a very interesting AI technology. They raised in Feb, can't remember exactly, I think 30 or $35 million. And then FinTech obviously is on the rise as well. They had Series A back in April. So just kind of really showing you ideas outside of MarTech. I'm sure there's a lot of interesting and exciting things still happening in MarTech, but we kind of encourage people to think just outside of the box. So when it comes to the discussion, what I was really thinking of, I'm going to actually show all the different points, and we can just kind of go one by one. So I think what will be really good is if we can all share, like, what are your observations, what are your tactics, what are your best practices right now, what have you seen in the market, how do you differentiate yourself, what is your strategy? And I mean, again, like I said, you can agree, disagree with the industries that I've presented, but how do you find the industries, the winning industries moving forward? How do you uncover, the cash-rich businesses? Also, some of the questions which came up in my different conversations is there will be businesses which they will potentially inclined to negotiate or reduce, packages. There are some businesses which we're trying to save, cash. They offer, for instance, 4-day week contracts. So not a full-time, but sort of 80%. Is this something that you've come across, or would you consider? Would that be an option? And also, what if, because this seems to be coming up as well. What do you offer? The fixed term contract? Would you go for that? And what if, because we've seen again some businesses, they offer delayed start date. Let's say they would make you an offer now, but they will say let's start. You can start in September. What do? Do you still continue looking for a job and wait, or you just stay put? So it'll be really interesting to hear your thoughts. So I think from what I understand, JV and Rob, I think you guys are probably a bit more advanced in terms of your job search right now. So I don't know if you want to kick off with your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick things off. I think what's been interesting is there's certainly still a lot of companies that are hiring for quite interesting roles from what I've seen. And in terms of the observations and tactics that I've used, it's just been absolutely humble and authentic on LinkedIn. One of the biggest tactics for me actually getting a lot of traction with new opportunities, I put up a post after we had to make the formal announcement about Lytics, which was pretty raw is too extreme a word, but it was just a very heartfelt message about the team that I wanted to get rehired as quickly as possible. And from that, I mean, it got an extent, like a good amount of reach from it, but I had so many people get in contact, with me directly just to be like, hey, how can I help? So I think that was something that I wasn't really looking for, or I wasn't really anticipating, but it was quite good. I think that's been one thing from a LinkedIn post. When you're going through the process, everybody on this call has got great experience and can add value to organizations. So I think differentiating yourself is just how you sell yourself in interviews. I mean, it's much more complex than that. One thing that I've used that has helped me to evaluate the different opportunities, I call them my 5 Ps. So for every opportunity, like kind of what Chris mentioned, I have a spreadsheet that I use for all the different opportunities, but then I have like 5 Ps. So each column is what are the people like? Have they had success of building organizations, exiting organizations, etc.? What's the culture like on Glassdoor? Then the product. So again, looking into G2 Crowd, what are the reviews like? Do they have advocates? Then the progression opportunities available within the organization if it continues to grow. The predictability of the organization. This is a new P I've just inserted this time. So sort of how, COVID insulated are they? Are they still adding value, still growing? And then finally, just the last P is package. So that's just really helped me to evaluate an organization across multiple different facets. And I can have a tendency to go on and chat forever, so I'll pass over to someone else at this point.
That's a good start. Yeah, that's a good start. Thank you. JV, did you have any thoughts on that?
My thoughts are my Wi-Fi dropped when you were listing the sectors that works, or so I missed the context of what you said in the past maybe 3 minutes.
Okay.
But I'm happy to jump in. What was the?
Well, I mean, so basically, I think actually because you joined our webinar before, so you've heard of the winning industries that we predict.
Yeah.
But where we are right now, so it's actually we're talking about, you know, your observations from the market in terms of job hunting, your tactics, your best strategies. I understand you had a few things on the go.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate yourself? I mean, if you can share anything on that.
Yeah, and I may ask later as a catch up, what were the 5P? I like the applying evaluation to opportunities. You know, even if things get tougher, we all are experienced people, and it doesn't mean the increased competition wash away the experience on whatever you can bring to a company. So it just make it harder for them to see through. So one thing that I've done that helps me, well, so far it's only been 3 weeks, but one thing I do is a little document where I treat that as a go live plan. I don't call it go live plan. In fact, when I use it with client, I use it with different names. One clever one is a Q&A. So I do a shared Google Doc. I'm happy to share it after. You know, the trick is having that Google Doc where you can put questions makes it a more dynamic process, depending where you are in the job funnel. If it's a discussion you're having and you have all those questions about where you're going to be in 6, 9, 18 months, what the career progression, what is the mission at hand, whatever it is, I like the shared Google Doc thing. Number one, you see if they're very engaged or if they don't care. If they engage, they will add questions themselves, answer questions. You even see when they connected to it. So I found this little, instead of relying on email, having a shared document that establish, you can add any section to the document, but it's effectively a go live plan for your go live plan of yourself, you know, into the job.
So from what I understand, is this something that you engage the businesses that you're talking to sort of share the data?
Yeah, for example, if I speak to someone and I cannot do that, I don't do quantity. I try to focus on real, tangible opportunity, and it's going well. You know, you're not going to do that on the first, maybe not on the first conversation, but after first conversation. And they say, "Oh, can you send me your CV?" And then generally, if it's going somewhere, you're going to have deeper and further questions. So instead of just sending a file, I just send that Google Doc and say, yeah, my CV is referenced there. And then you can add links, you can add questions, tag them. Like, it's almost like a working project already, you know. And I think from experience, I haven't tested it extensively in recruitment or be efficient.
Okay, I think your line is slightly breaking up. So I think from both Rob and JV that the due diligence sounds like it's very key. It's not really going after the volume, but rather the quality of opportunities. Any other thoughts, Simon, Michael, or James?
Yeah, so I totally echo that. I think it's all about quality right now. Whilst there's a knee twitch to get yourself straight into a job, in 6 to 9 months, that may not be where you actually want to be, which is a waste of everybody's time and energy. So actually, it's very rare, I've found. So I've never not had a job since I was about 16. To actually have that opportunity to step back, look at the market and say, actually, what do I want to be doing? Where do I want to be going? Where do I see myself, and what kind of company do I want to work for? And that's actually quite a privileged position. So yes, it's anxious and there's nervousness around what's happening out there, but actually being able to take yourself out of it and go, actually, what does my future look like? It's a really rare and really special opportunity, I think. And that's brought a lot of comfort, but also a lot of perspective of actually what I want to be doing and the kind of companies I want to work for. And it's really drilled that down into the kind of businesses that I see myself fitting in. So that's kind of the first piece for me, is taking the time to actually research and look at what you want to be doing and where you want to be going. And the second really piece to me, which I'm in pre-sales, the fact that my network has been so unbelievably amazing has really blown me away. I've never been the kind of person to ask for help from a professional perspective. Obviously, in turn, when you're working for somewhere, absolutely. But it's kind of this weird sense of pride of, I've been doing this for 20 years. It will be absolutely fine. When actually everybody wants to help. And I think that's something that we should all take away with us and make sure that we really incorporate in wherever we end up going. It's great to help people because people want to help. Don't be afraid to ask. Talk to your network. Ask them to refer you into people that they know. They're all your network for a reason. And even if you've not spoken to someone for years, it's a really valuable piece of the puzzle to me. I think I've really discovered that and knuckled down on it as well.
Yeah, I can absolutely second that. I mean, I think the usage of your own network, the quality of your network, I mean, this is the key thing, especially if you're looking actively. And I think we should differentiate between two things. So if you look for a new role, you can go out actively, and the best is, I think, go through your network, enable your network, somehow, whatever you can. The other thing is that someone will find you. So which means an anonymous company you never worked before, who look on your profile and say, hey, this is the guy, this is the person. To be honest, case number 2 rarely happens. I don't know, in my whatever 25 years, and it's my 4th crisis I'm in, it's the network who makes the difference. Even if you look at a company you don't know up front, but you see, hey, there's someone from a body working in the company, you just reach out and say, hey, how is this company? How are you doing? These things. Not necessarily asking for the job, but just getting this background information, and then you think, hey, this is fine, this looks good. Hey guy, can you do a referral? Do you guys have something like that? And in most of the cases, your body is happy to make a referral for you. And that is the second thing. Is the third thing for me is important, is to get over this first level hurdle of the whole initial recruiting process. My goal is always to say, how quick and how easy can I go to the hiring manager for an interview? The risk today, nowadays, is on two sides. Whatever you put in your CV or in your LinkedIn profile, it will just categorize you. And the recruiters in the companies, often young people, unexperienced, they're just using the check boxes. Okay, is this? But they don't ask behind. So they will hire people who probably have like 50 out of 50 checkboxes checked. But these people are doing nothing else than polishing their profiles, their CVs and this thing. And then a year later, they are looking for the next job. So I've seen that so often that companies have to change stuff just because they hired the wrong stuff, just because of the boxes they checked, rather than, let's say, going more in an individual hiring process up front. And this is the key thing nowadays, with all the tools, with everything we have in place. How can you go through that to the hiring manager? Because if I'm talking to someone, then I know, okay, we like each other, it's a personal thing, this is something, and I can influence, and I can say, hey guy, I can help you create something. I can help bring you the business forwards by doing that and that and that. And that's something you can write somewhere, or you can do with checkboxes. So for me, as I said, summarize key things is use the network. If people have to find you, try to get somehow into that company and try to get over that whole initial recruiting process, because that's a big point. I mean, for me, even more difficult is the age, I have to admit. I mean, Of course, if my CV would say, hey, he's 30, he has 20 years experience, he has 10 baccalaureate degrees or so, I mean, this is not possible. But then the people say, okay, we're not hiring above 40. I mean, you're out. And I have seen that. And what does it say? You're no social fit for the company. I mean, why? Probably we also have to educate a little bit these companies and say, hey guys, I mean, this is not just like black and white and boxes. I mean, the mix is important, even for a team. I work the best teams. I work for young people, old people, mixed genders, whatever thing, because you can benefit from each other. And nowadays we are losing a little bit this flexibility, I think, from the company's point of view. And as I said, there's a risk for companies also to hire fakes. I mean, how easy is it to fake your CV? How easy it is to fake your LinkedIn profile and all these things? If you can do that, I mean, it's easy to jump in and then after a year, okay, you figure out, hey, you're nothing. So the referrer is important, but the referrer, the personal referrer, is also your network. So that's why I'm using, like James said, my network wherever it's possible.
And just to add to that, Michael, I thought that's some really good points there, particularly from the perspective that culture is such a big key, it's a key aspect of do you want to work for this business and what's the culture like, and are you the right fit, in inverted commas? And that's a lot of that is in an intangible thing, right? And unless you get a certain amount of distance down the interview process, then you'll never really know what that culture might actually be like. But to that point, I think it's important that you kind of take stock to I think Chris's earlier point. You don't jump in straight away. Assess what it is. Ask yourself, right, what do I actually want to do? What's really important for me with this next role? What's the sector it's in? What am I going to be doing? What are my responsibilities? How big is the team? What's that team look like? Is it a mix of people? Is it, half a dozen 25-year-olds? Or, is it a blend of people who've been there for 1, 2, 5, 10 years? Which for me shows, personally speaking, if people are all sorts of different backgrounds, ages, whatever, and they've been there for a range of time frames, then that to me shows a lot more trust within the business. It shows that people obviously don't leave and they have to keep rehiring. Stability, of teams. How long have you been here? I've been here 6 months. How long? 3 years, 5 years, 4 years, whatever it might be. And obviously in sales, there's a bit of a difference. People do move around a bit more frequently, perhaps after a less amount of time, every 2 or 3 years perhaps is completely acceptable. I think it's quite rare that people do stay in businesses, and correct me if I'm wrong, in technology for any more than 5 years. I would be, why are they still there? Have they progressed? And that's fine, but are they still doing the same thing that they were doing 5 years prior? But yeah, there's certainly, I think my point is, don't jump in straight away. Just kind of reevaluate what's important. And certainly I've felt latterly, I'm 45 and I have a daughter, she's 5. There's lots of priorities that have perhaps changed slightly or evolved in terms of important for me. Things like commutes, the hours I work, the trust that my manager may or may not have in me. What's important, to people does change. And if it's to try and understand, either from the hiring manager or certainly the team for whom you might be working, what's their attitude? What's the blend of people there? Are they going to understand whether you do or don't have kids, whether your commute is 10 minutes or an hour and a half each way? Trying to get a feel for what drives that person, and are they going to empathize with certain situations? It's a given that you can do your job, probably, right? Your CV says as much. So it becomes, for me, I think, more of a fit, and how you're going to induct yourself into that team. That's my personal opinion. I think if they've hired you, the chances are it's because they know what you do. You've done a good job before. Your track record and your references back that up. The other key part is, do I trust this person to get on with it, get along with the other team members, and help grow the business, whatever that means to them. That's my take. It's not just, are you going to do the number? Because you either will or you won't. However, whether you're a nice guy or not. That's my take.
Yeah, thanks. My connection dropped, so Simon, I missed a bit of your. Sorry about that.
It was all quality.
It's being recorded, so I'm sure it's good. But I think I can relate to that, having background actually working in-house as a recruitment manager, talent manager, and obviously now working on the sort of the dark side of the force. But I think you really need to have an ambassador, whether it's your external recruiter or whether it's your internal person who is kind of introducing you to the business. It's very key, because different things come into play which don't normally see. Yes, there is discrimination on age. There is discrimination on, do you tick all the boxes? I think there is a lot of junior recruiters in-house, like Michael mentioned, who don't really see that through. I mean, again, for example, the way we work with our clients, like if I know, for example, you guys, then I can go to our client and can say, I really think you should go and meet Rob because A, B, C. Even if they don't see that on the CV, I'm able to convince them, and I'm able to sort of be an ambassador to, a candidate that we know is strong and relevant, and just get you the interview. And we've had a lot of cases where actually that strategy worked, because you only were given the chance to talk to the hiring manager, not based on your profile, but based on actually our recommendation in this case. But I'm saying, if you have an internal ambassador in the business who can get you in front of the right person to talk to, that's already half of the success. Do you agree on the sort of the industries, or are you exploring mainly marketing technology, or have you looked outside?
I'm currently I'm long in marketing tech. I mean, I would be happy to change industry. So I've been in the middle of different industries throughout all my career. I think this is one of the key things is also that you have to be open-minded for something completely new. I mean, the challenge is just how to get into that, I mean, the area where I'm living, for example, we have a lot of the biomedicine tech, high-tech companies, but they require whatever you know about medicine, about chemistry, whatever, things like that, but I have no clue. I mean, I know how to sell. I can sell a car, I can sell software, I can sell whatever thing, a house. I probably can sell a corona, whatever test. But how can you go in such a new industry? I think the trends, yes, but how can you, as someone who comes from IT or from a specific vertical in IT, change that segment? And again, this is a bit of an hurdle where I have probably more question marks than answers at the moment.
Any other comments or any answers to Michael's question?
I think it comes in terms of the skills that are transferable. I mean, during my time at Salesforce, some of the best salespeople that we recruited never had any technology sales experience, literally. Like, I was working a lot on the financial services side of the business, and we actually hired in like a trader, a wealth manager, and just they had so many skills that they could transfer that they actually went on to be some of the more successful people that we had hired. So I think there's always like different skills that you're able to transfer into to each new opportunity that presents itself.
Yeah, agreed on that.
Just a question on that. I agree that in IT, I'm talking about the entire IT, I mean, we hired from people from outside simply because there was a need of people. That was in the 90s, that was in the last 20 years. But how's the other way around? And I think if you're talking about new industries, we also should look around what's outside the IT, in medicine, technique, finance, and so on. And my impression is that there's less acceptance to hire people from outside the vertical. I might be wrong. Maybe it's just something local, but it's not a two-way principle I see in place.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question properly, or the comment. I think it is. Yeah, I don't think I understand the question.
Okay, well, what I was saying. So since I'm in IT, I mean, we hired people from outside IT industries without IT skills and knowledge.
Sure.
Simply because it's there was a need of people in places where you were just hiring like teachers, you were hiring like whoever for whatever jobs, and they made a career. But I've never seen that the other way around, or in that massive. So if you are, let's say, if you take medicine, technology, if you take whatever, automotive, or these things, I mean, are they going to hire people who have been 15 years in IT and say, hey, well, it's easy for you to be in? I see more resistant in that industries to look for people from IT than the other way around. So that was the comment.
On the other hand, if I may just add to that, you know, if there are new sectors will be growing, there's going to be a shortage of talent, you know, with the right sort of expertise within their sector. So eventually they will have to come out, same like it happened, you know, within the IT industry, because there was definitely a shortage of talent. So, any other comments? Anything else from you guys?
Now, for me, oh, sorry. Was it James?
After you, JV.
No, I was just going to add, it's very interesting to hear, Michael, thank you, and Robert as well, but whether you want to go to a different field or whether you have to go to a different field, I agree that there's a lot of transferable skill, like if you know how to sell, yeah, you can sell anything. But the one thing I wanted to add, and that's me, maybe I'll come to a point where I'm tired of marketing technology or ad tech, but the one thing that always make me hesitate even to consider outside opportunities is the idea that the network that we talked about earlier, where does that leave you in terms of being connected? You know, like we all like in an ecosystem where we have a network. If you go sell a software for maritime navigation, for example, can you do it? Probably. Will they take you? That is the key question that Michael raised. But also, you will have to build a network again. That's just a comment. I don't think it's good or bad, but it's one thing for me that make me hesitant to leave, you know, tech/ad tech, like mobile, etc. The industry I'm in.
I suppose. Yeah. Anyone? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to also, I think it also massively depends on your motivations as a person. Like there is no end of very, very, very interesting companies in all sectors. So if you're having to think, actually, I'm just going to fundamentally rip up everything I've known and start again, that would suggest that you've probably not done enough research into actually what's new. Like there's no denying it. The world that we emerge back into in 6-8 months, whatever that might be, is going to be extremely different. There's probably not going to be the emphasis on being in an office all the time, because fundamentally you can't be there. So actually that automatically brings up a whole world of new opportunity in workplace communications, all these different areas that actually play into exactly the same skill sets as attracting customers, whether they be for a retail brand or retaining your own internal employees. that's just a really interesting space. And I think we're all old enough to know that historically some communication internally in companies hasn't been that great. That's been massively extrapolated by no one being actually in an office environment anymore. So there's massive changes going to be happening of how you retain and actually foster that talent, which is automatically a massively interesting space that runs on everybody's skills, but will be a different world.
Yeah, definitely agree on that, James, that it really depends on your motivation. But I suppose the upside is if you change industries, there is that learning curve which tend to keep people longer in a new job, in a new company as well. But I think that there needs to be that motivation actually to do that, to start with. So yeah. How do you guys feel about, if you were offered a lower package, or you were offered a 4-day week contract, or fixed term contracts, would you jump into that, or you would wait? Or if you were offered a delayed type of contract, would you go into that and wait, or would you continue looking, knowing that, I mean, in Germany it's quite unusual that you have to wait 3 months before you start a new job. But I think in the UK, it's not a common scenario, but we've seen cases where, people can start in 3-4 months time, for example. So do you wait, or do you keep looking because company may change their mind?
I think you need to be flexible anyway. And it is an option if it depends on obviously your circumstances and whether you need a job and whether you need, being brutal, the money to a point. But is it going to harm your chances later, or looking for a job, if it's a job in itself, but arguably if it's a delayed start date, for example, then it gives you the opportunity to carry on your search with arguably a job at the end of it. Not necessarily guaranteed, but yeah, I think certainly being flexible and open-minded to different proposals is probably key to giving yourself the best chance of getting what you want, or at least getting you back in the frame for something, almost a stepping stone, perhaps. I'd consider most options. That said, obviously, it might mean that you're suddenly faced with a much broader, unfocused search, which could also cause you some grief. So it probably cuts both ways. But yeah, I mean, I think the more flexible and open-minded you can be about what's being offered, and if that company is prepared to negotiate, then perhaps you're able to negotiate as well. Certainly throws up some interesting opportunities.
I have gone through pretty much 2 full processes now. What I have seen on the market is that companies are absolutely still willing to negotiate. Even though there might be more talent available, they still, if you're able to put yourself that you're their guy or gal, then they're going to make it work, especially those companies that have just been through recent rounds of funding or are very well insulated from the effects of COVID. It's funny, I actually got knocked back a little bit with that delayed start date notion, which I wasn't actually anticipating during it. And it was quite an interesting conversation, but it just brings back into the negotiation thing. So yes, I could start, delayed start in 2 or 3 months time, but can you give me a sign-on bonus when I join? That basically makes up the difference between now and then. So I think it's been encouraging to see that companies are still willing to negotiate on all different aspects.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's no denying it. It's going to be a buyer's market, but whatever happens at the end of this, companies will still need talent, and arguably more so as we emerge from here, because people need to scale back up. They need to come back out of lockdown. So actually having that talent and that availability is absolutely critical to them. I think also more from a personal perspective, actually, my mindset has changed significantly throughout this. Of actually, you know, it's really been great having time to do learning, to do other things, to volunteer outside of my normal work package. So actually, that's now, as I think you were saying, Simon, earlier, it's much more of a, my priorities may have shifted a little bit, rather than working 12, 14-hour days. Actually, what makes me a more rounded human being, and actually that will inversely massively help any company that will come along in the future.
Which, Christophe, I don't know if it's, I don't want to hijack the agenda, but we're going to talk about remote. Like James has been making very interesting points about after, and the very likeliness that whether you want to be in the office, I still see a lot of job ads at the moment. They're like, must be able to attend the office, like, you know, some kind of subliminal message, work from home is now welcome. And when I read that, I smile, because I'm like, update your job ads, because whether you want people to be in the office or not, that's irrelevant in a time where, you know, we will have to work remotely more. That's a fact. Even just to avoid getting on the tube, like, you know, it's not necessarily going to be a lockdown for years, but I'm just thinking that the comfort that James described and how you change your perspective on things has been not a chosen path, but we all have to do that reflection. And a lot of people actually enjoy some parts of being at home, even though they didn't choose to be at home. So yeah, but my point, Christophe, is, did you guys come across opportunities on the other side of the continent or on another continent and still be tempted to apply, with the argument that you could be there, you could be here, it doesn't matter. The continent is different because it could be 5 hours difference, but I'm talking applying from the UK to a job in Germany or wherever in Europe.
I know what you're saying. We've kind of tried that with some candidates. For example, you know, you French speaking, being here with a job in Paris, but I haven't seen companies being that open-minded yet, to be honest with you. So maybe it's something that will come, but we haven't seen that yet.
I'm seeing two trends. Past 2 or 3 years, I've seen companies more focusing work from a centralized place in Europe, London, Dublin, Barcelona, Amsterdam, you name the cities, and hiring people. Let's say there was a company in Lisbon, so they had people from France, from Germany, and just work out of Lisbon. Why? Because it's cheap over there. The people are cheap over there. Are they successful? No. I think in countries like France, Germany, Benelux, Italy, wherever, it is important that you have local people. You don't have to have necessarily a local office, but you have to have local people. And I think we need to, if we look forward, we need to have this balance between, yes, there's one office space in Europe, and this doesn't really matter if it's in Moscow or if it's in Lisbon or if it's in Dublin or wherever. But you need to make sure that you have your team located around Europe, because the buyers, the customers, give you more trust. If they know, okay, Michael is located in Southwest Germany, I'm in Hamburg, okay, this is kind of close because it's my country. If Michael is located in whatever, in Madrid, it's still not that match. It's the same person. We do a lot of remote, but it's still not psychological. It's a hurdle. It's a thing these people have, the buyers have. So my recommendation to companies again is to say, okay, fine, if you just work from a central place in Europe, so that saves you a lot of office costs, a lot of costs in funding companies and these things, but locate your stuff remotely. And I think the Germans can play a little bit of a spearhead in that, because unlike the other countries, we are very decentralized. You know, I mean, where's business in the UK? It's in London. Business in France is in Paris. You know, everything is around 1 or 2 cities. We have like in DACH, we have like 8, 9 marketplaces. So companies in Germany are always faced with the situation to have people more decentralized. And if we can become the spirit to say, okay, now mix of an office and remote, I think that's the best solution. And that not only for the German countries, but German-speaking countries, but also for the entire Europe. But this Corona time, this change, it's a learning curve for the companies. And this is what I said earlier when I said, when I'm talking with the hiring manager, this is the idea I can give the companies. And probably that also differentiates me then. And they will say, hey, this is a good thing we never thought about, or we don't know how to do. I work remote since 15 years. It's a certain discipline you have to have if you work remote. Because there's still this stereotype, oh, these people work remote. Yeah, they get up by 10 in the morning, then they have coffee, you know, they put their feet on the table, then they're probably dressed, and so on, you know. And to be honest, if I see my neighbors, yes, it is. People are first time remote, and when you're running around in training suits and yeah, blah, 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 blah. So working remote is a discipline you need to know how to do. And that's what companies need to learn and to adopt.
And just to go on to that point, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the buyer side also changes. So like all of us have been in software, right? How many of us love to do like workshops with customers and bring them all into a room and whiteboard stuff on a whiteboard? I think it's going to be fascinating to see the buyer side change to how they purchase technology as well. There's no question there. Just I think it's a thought that came across my mind as you were going through those points, Michael.
From a recruitment point of view, I can also probably add that there will be candidates which will have the advantage over some others, and those will be who have the experience of actually working from home, who are self-starters. And I really believe companies will start adding filters in the recruitment process. Can this person work from home? Can this person, you know, is he or she a self-starter? You know, will I have to micromanage this person? If you go in for leadership roles, they will be looking for, can this person manage a team remotely in this new environment to get the best out of it and things like that. So I can see the hiring process being tweaked over the next, you know, months. I think it's already starting, and companies will start digging, you know, into looking for those skills, which is okay, but at the same time, I think it will leave a lot of candidates, you know, a bit behind, because working from home is not for everyone. You know, some people struggle with that. You know, they suffer, you know, with anxiety. They need to be around, you know, other people and things like that. So, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how that sort of, you know, pans out. But because I'm sure, yeah, there will be winners out of that, but there will be people who will. Yeah, they will struggle. So obviously, if you have that experience, then it's good to position yourself, you know, whether you can actually do the job well, you know, being most of the time, you know, home-based, because I think that's going to be the case for the next, 6-12 months. I'm conscious of time. I think we've kind of gone over an hour. Any other additional comments, any questions, anything else? Any suggestions in terms of where you want to go from here? I have an idea, but I just want to put out the question first.
Yeah, a question for the panel. Genuinely interested. Has anyone been approached / be interested in, you know, doing consulting jobs instead of, you know, a full-time position? Did that happen to you in the past few weeks, that someone in your network you're speaking to that I'd love to work with you? I don't have a head count, but I have a little agreement on the side that I can send you, you know, like either commission only or some kind of commission job. I'm just curious.
I got one from a partner I worked with in the past from the Untitled times. He started a company in Czech Republic, and these guys are now thinking about to expand to the German-speaking market. So he reached out to me and asked for help, more or less on a freelancer base. to bring them into the market, which I think is a good thing. I mean, I would have done it in any case. Probably these are other opportunities. So yeah, I had this one case.
Also one case, interestingly, for my former employer that just let me go. They were trying to figure, we just won some deals in principle. So just gotten down through RFPs and won the deals, but now it was a very difficult message for them to deliver to the client that they are no longer going to be able to be supported through Europe. So it was an initial conversation to understand, could we set up a consulting firm between me and our sort of pre-sales and engineering resources in order to support the customers. But just there wasn't enough buy-in from all of us, just having been laid off and wanted to be employed back through a consulting agreement. But yeah, I have seen it just in that really weird scenario.
Thanks.
So question, I suppose, is, or a suggestion, now, because all of you have kind of got a bit of an idea on each other, my suggestion for you is to keep an eye for each other. If you hear of, relevant roles, we can set up either a Slack chat, or we can set up just a small group on LinkedIn. And if something just comes up interesting, you can just, throw it to the group. We've done that with a similar sort of workshop before, and people which has been, I think, like James mentioned, being just really